We're ready to get, everybody's good.
Yes.
I guess I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Tuesday, January 13th. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 3, first Selectwoman's update. I guess just a couple things. First of all, I just want to highlight that last week we had 2 really interesting evenings of presentations on Academy regarding the expression of interests. Those presentations of the 4 proposers are available online. So you can go to the Academy section and there's a big button down on the front homepage too if you want to. And then also you can look on the Agenda Center for the videos of the presentations. So I thought those were quite interesting, and the board will be obviously taking up in the next couple of weeks kind of where we go from there in this process. And then also, I know last night there were 2 public hearings on 2 projects that the board was briefed on at the end of last year, and that one is the sidewalk and crosswalk projects for Route 1, as well as the plan for the Madison Center project, which is kind of phase 3 of an ongoing 20-year kind of downtown public improvement project. So I think there was a good attendance at those and a lot of interesting feedback. Rob is going to be kind of taking notes on that, and then maybe we'll talk about that at our next board meeting, some of the feedback that we received from the public on the design plans. And people are welcome to email the board too if you have any specific. I've gotten 1 or 2 emails today about that, but obviously 2 very exciting projects that have gone through the process here. Those plans were actually shown to our board, I think, right before the Christmas holidays. So, anyways, both all good things. And then thirdly, just a reminder that tomorrow there is a special town meeting regarding the $750,000 appropriation that was approved for the major road fund. That is part of our Madison investment plan, basically infusing some additional capital into our road paving account so we can, continue to kind of get ahead a little bit and improve our road rating in town. So a reminder on that, that's at 6:30 at Polson. That will be in person only because that's a voting meeting if we get a quorum of 150 people. And so we can't really do those hybrid because of voting. And that is my update. So any liaison reports or selectmen comments?
Well, I want to remind everybody that the Surf Club Master Plan online survey is open. The simplest thing is to go to the town webpage, and in the search window for the town webpage, just type in Surf Club Master Plan, and it will take you right to the survey.
A quick update from the library, if I can have the mic. So here's the winter report from our library board of trustees. The first of all, the fundraising. I guess that the 1210 a novel pairing event sold out and was very successful, and is likely to be repeated in the spring. Work on the new initiative Dine Out for the library and on the annual Heart of Madison raffle will begin in January. From a policy and committee update standpoint, work continues in the areas of finance policies, the new strategic plan, and updates to the old post office, affectionately called OPO. The library's CPA gave his annual presentation to the Board of Trustees on the 12th of January. And then they got a good news email or good news update from the director of the library, Allison Murphy, who submitted her annual report to state, which contains so many good news items. One timely thing to note is that the amount of use on the old post office is really increasing. Some of the users are committees, home school groups, book clubs, craft clubs, and even several birthday parties. So that is our update from the library.
I'll do a quick update. Just a reminder that Senior Services Commission is on their winter hiatus, but that does not mean that there aren't lots of fun senior center activities going on. So for folks that are interested in those, be sure to keep up with their email newsletter or print newsletter that comes out on a monthly basis. And then also for our Affordable Housing Committee, we've recently had some resignations. So we do have some openings on that committee. If that's something that speaks to you as a member of the public, we would love to see some hands raised for volunteerism there.
Al, any updates? Nope. Great. I know we're kind of fresh back from our kind of the holiday season. December was kind of a very busy month. I guess moving on to item number 6, citizens' comments. Please raise your hand if you would like to make a comment.
We have some hands raised. Hold on.
Okay, just ask that you limit your comments to 2 minutes and state your name and address, please.
Go ahead, Terry.
Okay, hi, Terry, Vanderbilder on Bartlett Drive. Item 8 on the agenda today is to approve $68,100 to Shukoki and Sons contractor to repair the seawall at Garden Point. And I understand this is the same contractor who was hired to build the original seawall improvements, which failed during a recent storm, and that storm was not even a major one. If you, the Board of Selectmen, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with a contractor to renovate a portion of your home, and less than a year after completion of the renovation, there was damage to your home that caused by deficiencies in the construction of the renovation, would you then hire the same contractor to do the work, or would you seek reparations from the original contractor and hire a different one to fix your home? There's a concern that hiring the same contractor could set a precedent in this town going forward, whereby any contractor or business hired by the Board of Selectmen or the town will not be held accountable or provide a warranty to fix any issues stemming from deficiencies in the work performed by that business. Are the people going to be asked to fund any deficiencies of construction or failed contracts going forward? Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your comments on item 8.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands raised?
Go ahead, Dennis.
Hi, Dennis Crow, 141 Twilight Drive. I would like to second Terry's concerns there that we have a major issue with a repair or with an add-on to the previously existing seawall. And the failure, which Terry also alluded to, was unexpected for a storm of that small magnitude. It was vicious, but it was not a hurricane. And the failure was at the seam between the old wall and the new wall, and the water rushed through there. There's signs that went back and forth. I don't know if any of you have seen the post put up by Jim Schmaltz on Facebook, but it listed a very technically detailed summary of what had happened in that area and why. It was just because the seam between the two walls was not done properly. It was just not done properly. And I believe that we need to know who was at fault for that. Was it the town engineer? Was it the town itself? Was it the contractor? It certainly was something that was manageable had the work been done properly in the first place. And I, for one, do not believe that taxpayers should be on the hook for this. And I hope that you will take action to recoup those losses from the contractor if that was in fact the case. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Next up, please speak your name and address and limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Oh, this is Amy Wu. I didn't hear the name of the first person who spoke during public comment. I just heard Terry something.
Vanderbilder.
Sorry?
Vanderbilder.
Oh, Vanderbilder. Okay, thank you.
Any other hands raised?
There are not.
Okay, there's an opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. So with that, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the consent agenda. And may I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, any comments or questions to the consent agenda? With that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, consent agenda passes. So moving on to item number 7, an update from the town engineer on the storm-related damage at the Surf Club. And obviously invite up Rob Russo, our town engineer, to talk about this. I briefly mentioned this to the board back in our December 22nd meeting. And we've had review by the engineering firm that came out and looked at it. And I just think it's important to set the record straight here. I think there's been a lot of misrepresentation about what happened. And you know, I'll let Rob speak to this as a professional. I think this town has done an excellent job responding to this, and we're now have a mitigation plan that we'll be talking about to, but this is going to be an ongoing conversation for the town for the next 5 years, really. And it's part of the whole surf club planning process about the seawall that is probably 30+ years old at the beach, was impacted by this storm. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Rob to just kind of briefly explain what happened. I know you've got some photos, and then we can talk about how we want to kind of try to shore this up as much as we can moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I know this has been a lot of information out there regarding what's happened, and basically, I just want to shed some light, at least the town's current stance on what's going on here. So basically, there was a storm event on December 19th. I think the magnitude of the event was a little greater than that what's being led on. Austin Hall could speak more to that, but it was the first time that he's seen waves approach like the volleyball courts, and Austin's been here a long time. So I think the storm event was definitely more significant, maybe not in all areas of town, but certainly for the shoreline. What we saw was there was a fair to significant amount of scour in front of the old seawall as well as the new Garvin Point seawall. And then there was also a significant amount of erosion from behind both of those as well. A lot of that erosion exited with the wave action from underneath the joint between the Garvin Point seawall and the old concrete. For the sake of this conversation, to keep things abbreviated, let's call the old wall versus new wall. A fair amount of material went out underneath a small portion of the joint that was recently connected between the two walls, as well as there being erosion between the old shallow footings. There was probably another 12 or 18 inches of exposure there that, sediment and sand and soil, it was able to escape beneath both of those gaps. The important part, and you'll see in the upcoming photos of the old wall, was structurally there was no discontinuity. As designed, there was no settlement in the walls, particularly at the joint, or the new Garvin Point wall was completely unaffected. There was no erosion at the top of the point, and there was nothing structurally with that wall, as well as the connection to the old wall. And ultimately, and I'll get into this more in a second, that was the goal of the Garvin Point project, was to protect the point. It was highlighted in our consultants' presentations at different types of public information meetings. This was not an overall seawall project to protect the entire surf club. That project that was recently constructed was solely Garvin Point. And as you can see out there after the storm, the entire point was unaffected. It just happened to be at the connection of the to the surf club beach, kind of away from the point. And again, I'll speak on more of that in a second. But subsequent to the storm event on December 19th, there was a lot of talk about the town sort of dragging their feet and not acting appropriately or effectively. And I just want to clear the air, that's inaccurate. Immediately once the storm event happened and we saw the beginning of the erosion, we immediately contacted our consulting engineer, Austin, Sam DeBurr, the director of operations, Peggy, other town personnel were informed of what's going on here. And we immediately visited the site on a number of occasions. Our consulting engineer and the contractor, unfortunately, this happened at the uh, the worst time of year and the best time of year, the holiday season, where on getting people out there was not the easiest thing to do before or just after Christmas and New Year's. So once kind of the dust settled after the new year, we were immediately able to get our engineer out there. So Monday, January 5th, we met with our engineer, and a couple of days later on that Thursday, we met with the contractor who built the wall and to discuss what's going on and to potentially come up with a mitigation measure. So that's currently where we stand now. What I'd like to do is give like a brief history, and if you don't mind me sharing my screen for a moment, showing some pictures here. Um, let's take a little trip down memory lane here. So this was back in May of 2003. These are the pictures prior to the point being reconstructed. As you can see here, there's erosion nearly identical to what's out there now. Sure, there's been it's probably definitely more material now, but again, the same condition exists, and the new wall was not constructed at this time. But as you can see, because the new wall isn't here, you could see a structural discontinuity here where the walls have become disjointed. And this is where we ultimately wind up bringing the new wall, expanding the scope of the new project. We weren't even, the original Garvin Point project was actually going to end at the U shape that's there. But because of these issues that we are aware of, we were able to stretch the budget and get this and continue it as far as we could. And basically, it's around this area where we wind up cutting the wall and continue and wherever the nearest joint was, bringing the new wall to that point. But as you can see, this is an issue that's been here in the past, and by these pictures was not created by the recently constructed wall. If you don't mind, I'm going to go scan through a few more of these pictures here. This one being the most significant. In the corner of
2003,
this
Rob.
picture, yes. I'm sorry.
It was 2003.
2003. Yeah, at least that's what it's noted here on the plans, May to 2023. So I'll briefly go through these pictures to see kind of the impacts that happened back then, which again was not a major storm. This was not a hurricane event. It was not a normal or simple, but a similar storm to what we just had, where again, not a hurricane, but still significant enough to cause this level of damage. So again, here, erosion, structural discontinuity. You can't really, this is not the greatest picture. You could see some erosion down here by the stairs, but again, you could see in the corner here, structural discontinuity. Structurally cracking, especially here at the joint, cracking here. And this was all as part of that storm. Here, undermining the existing staircase that was here, as well as you could see the sand levels here are significantly lower. Normally, the sand levels are up here. This is about 3 or 4 feet of sand loss at this location. Similar to here, just like we saw during our most recent storm event, we had significant exposure to our footings. Again, this is this older wall here that was built. We don't have an exact date on this, but greater than around 25 plus years. This entire footing isn't exposed. There is gaps between the bottom of the footing and the sand. And if you go on top here, you can see similar issues where, there was erosion that, again, just like this, may have gone over the top, may have gone through the weep holes, may have undermined the shallow foundations. This year, I don't think had anything to do with that storm. I think this was another reason why we were replacing the point. I just think this was part of their wood concrete cap. Wood cap opposed to a concrete cap now. Is much more sturdy. This clearly wasn't as sturdy. And then let's go over here. And now this completely unrelated to joints with the concrete wall. I know I've been talking a lot about the concrete wall, the shallow footings, the old bulkhead, but look at this. Completely, this is at the point next to adjacent to the boat launch, completely unrelated to that. Look at the significant erosion around the outer edges here. I think I had another picture. Yeah, all significant erosion around here. With the new seawall that was recently constructed, none of this occurred. There was not these were our recently constructed seawall is clearly an improvement compared to what was happening here. So as you go, here's another great picture here. Look at this. This is right at the tip of the point. Again, this is now where we have our concrete cap boardwalk, planting area. No damage there with the recent storm. Significant damage here with this storm. Right, another structural discontinuity with this storm right here. The walls displaced, completely coming apart. Did not happen with this last storm event. And here, the last picture. I think I might have even showed this one already, but this is towards the northeasterly part. The southwesterly portion of the point. More significant erosion again did not occur with the new point in place. So why did I take us down this trip down memory lane? Not to necessarily prove a point, but it shows the need of why this project happened and what needed to be addressed. So at that time, although I did not have direct involvement, I was aware of the project, and the town ultimately decided to make this a priority and address the issues before we lost the point in its entirety. So at that point in time, we sought. At that time, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection was providing money for projects like this. We went after that grant and were awarded a $770,000 urban action grant that was administered through CT Deep. We also allocated an additional $623,000 in change for construction, and an additional municipal allotment of $205,000 and a little bit more in change. So a total of $828,557.33 for design and construction. So not exactly a 50-50 split, but very close. So we used this funding that we had in place, allocated, and moved forward with the design process where through a request for qualifications process, we hired SLR Consulting, who's the most qualified consultant who has experience in these type of projects, not just in Connecticut, but in other states as well. Ultimately, throughout the design process, that went through our normal standard policies and procedures, public information meetings, public bid process. We awarded the project to Suhaki and Son for the original contract amount of $1,371,786. There was one change order on the project for $23,000 in change, and that was for an additional increase in concrete quantity, which again, not unusual for unit cost projects like this. So the project was completed back in May, and since that time, outside of having to maintain some of the sand in the area, Austin's guys have done a terrific job of maintaining the beach and our facilities down there, and they made sure that any exposure, especially at the staircase and seating wall, was safe, and any sand that may have washed away was restored for the people enjoying the beach and the facility during the summertime. We've seen storms between now from that point and December 19th, but nothing significant enough to show the scour and erosion that we saw a few weeks back. So now I just like to circle back to the current issue at hand here. Basically, yes, are we seeing a similar issue that we saw originally. And I know the next follow-up question is, well, shouldn't this a project eliminate that? Well, yes and no. Basically, we repaired as much of the seawall as we could, given the project scope and the available funding at the time. Anytime you retrofit projects with a new design, especially a brand new sheet pile with a very old, under-designed concrete wall, there's always the potential for issues. And to say this could have or should have been foreseen, I guess that's for others to decide. But basically, our engineer designed this with the best intent to protect the point, and that's exactly what it's done. So how do we handle the erosion issue? Well, or what exactly happened? Let me go a little bit further into that. Basically, the old wall there, since it has very shallow footings, the intent of our design was to match the bottom of that footing. Now, there's a couple of pictures floating around there that I like to elaborate on. First, one picture, it looks like there's a huge hole at the bottom left-hand side. I'd first like to make that clear that's not a hole. It looks like a hole because it's black and dark, but essentially the sheet pile extends another 15 inches into the concrete joint. So no water is going out there. However, that being said, right at the joint line where the footing is met, it looks like our contractor is a bit, maybe an inch or two short of where the bottom of the footing is. And again, based on what I see, it may have something to do with the concrete, I don't know, not curing essentially, or they may have had trouble tying into that existing wall that was there. I'm not entirely sure, but the bottom line is, it's very close to where if it was fully flush and the sheet pile was up against that concrete wall, there were still 18 inches of more of exposed footings on from the old wall. That sediment, just like the previous photos that I showed you, would still escape due to hydraulic pressure behind the wall. So I think the joint was a contributing factor, but I also believe that the very shallow, undersized wall was also a major contributing factor as well. Either way, there's two things that we could take out of this, right? A long-term solution needs to start being discussed by the town, and again, I'm not here to determine what that long-term solution is right now. And and I think that'll be driven by our surf club master plan, as well as additional follow-up meetings of like, do we eliminate a wall completely and have just a much larger beach? Do we continue our sheet pile wall so there is no joints and or just a joint between the sheet pile walls and extend it? Or do we do like we did over by the surf club building, where there is a concrete wall, but it's a much more robust, designed appropriate wall that's less prone to erosion and scour. But but in the short term, until we can come to that resolution, the proposed mitigation measure right now is to stabilize the eroded soil in layers using stone and reinforcing materials, meaning we're going to add filter fabric along the back face of the wall and on top of the installed soil, and then we'll have filter fabric at the bottom. And then we'll also use GeoGrid and 3/4 inch stone and install it in 1.5 foot layers until we get to the top of to finished grade, or just short of finished grade, so we can topsoil. This allows a couple things to happen. First, it'll fully stabilize the area behind the wall. So I think we can see now with this current storm that erosion, just like prior, before the seawall was constructed, this area still has some areas that are prior to that are what's the word I'm looking for? Prone to erosion. So by adding this design of the filter fabric, GeoGrid, crushed stone, we can ensure that water may get in, but at least when the water comes out, it's not taking any of the fine soils or the sand with it. And also, what it'll do is the geogrid and the stone will give it a level of structural integrity that if for some reason there's nothing we can do right now with the shallow footings in the old wall to protect it from scour. Because again, with this storm, that's frequently not shown in the pictures is there was about 20 to 30 feet that you could see exposed footing. It may not have been the entire footing, but you could see the footing for about 30 feet. So again, the geogrid and the stone will allow for structural stability behind the wall, just in case if there is some type of failure. The wall is acting more of a facade now, as opposed to if it will lose everything if the footing is undermined or for some reason the sea took the wall. We have a solid structure behind it in an area now that we know is prone to the erosion. So
So,
that's kind
Rob, I just want to keep, because when you talk about, you're talking about the old wall failing. This is all about the old wall. The new
yeah,
wall is performing beautifully and doing exactly what it was meant to be, right? So
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
all
So
mitigation efforts to support the old wall that we have known is going to be a future capital improvement project that the town is going to have to address at the surf club.
yeah, I mean, let me add to that point. So right now, the new wall is acting as the primary cutoff for the erosion and drainage. Like those piles that are there are 20, 25 feet in the ground. That is not at all being undermined or altered. It is the old seawall with those shallow, small footings that are being undermined by scour in the front and erosion in the back for sure. You're not getting underneath 20-foot sheet piles.
And so just to ask further, by putting in this mitigation plan, this is not a long-term solution, right? But we hope it will be a way to stabilize the old wall until we can determine what the long-term solution is.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to speak about some additional about the proposal that we were given. So that's the mitigation for the area of for behind the piece of the new seawall, old seawall, to
Well,
rectify.
I think that's what, the big discussion is about, right? And so I guess with that, um, any questions by the board members? I think all of you have probably gone out and seen the wall at this point, right? I know a number of you have had conversations with Rob. Um, are there any other questions about this? Just because there's been so much discussion by people who are not professionals, who are not involved in this project, who have no expertise in this area, who are that are commenting on the quality of this new structure that we built. And the town went through all the appropriate processes to do this project. The wall is well built. The wall functioned as it is designed to function. There can be debates about how the new wall and the old wall intersect. Could have been done differently, could have been done better, possibly. But I think the engineers did the best job that they could with the budget that they had, with the time frame that we gave them. And this is going to be a continual problem. When I think back to that storm that caused in 2023, that was another non-event storm in terms of, for most of the public, they didn't even think it was a big deal. But a lot of what happens at the surf club is the way the winds are directed. And we had 60-mile-per-hour plus winds that night at high tide, right at high tide. And they also came in a direction, it creates like a bowl effect in there. Most storms don't hit the surf club that way. So you have to have all these certain things line up when we see damage like that. And I remember when this happened back in 2023, we were like, wow, how did this come out of that storm? I also want to remind everybody that the storm that we had on December 19th, 3,500 people were without power in this town. It's a third.
That was one of them.
So, so it was a significant event. It was short and it was quick, but it was a significant event from a wind standpoint. And the timing of that storm hit us. And we're going to see more of these. And every storm hits us differently, and we see a different impact. Sometimes we see heavy, we've never had water come up to the volleyball courts before, or at least that I recall, and neither does Austin. So even though this wasn't a hurricane, we still had other things happen that we've never seen before. That's going to be a continual process that we deal with Mother Nature. So with that, I think the purpose of this project is to now address an erosion issue in the area where the old wall is still standing. And that's what Rob is proposing, is this mitigation plan to do this that we think is worthwhile doing, and making some other improvements. So with that, that is what we're here to approve. We think it's important to get this done quickly because we could see another winter storm come in. We'd like to get it done as quickly as possible. And the firm that did this project, and I don't think it's fair to have members of the public say that somehow the contractor that built this wall did something incorrectly or did not do quality work. It was built with a very high degree of quality and it was done well. So it's not fair to disparage contractors in this way, especially when you're not an expert in this area. So, and so that's why we're asking for the bid waiver, because we want to get this done quickly and take advantage of getting the time done. And then it'll give us time in the spring to get grass grown back down in that area, whatever we end up doing. I mean, this has been very frustrating for the staff. And the way that social media has taken this, what was a damage done from a storm and has spiraled into control into some sort of narrative that is just not accurate. And so with that, I'd like to resolve this and solve the problem and make sure that we have a beautiful Garvin Point to use this spring. And so that's why we brought this here. So I guess I open it up for board questions.
I have a couple, Rob, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I know you and I have talked quite at length about this and quite a few times, and I know you've spent a lot of time with the public as well. So thank you for your patience and your hard work on this. I know it's been a lot, sort of removing you from other work that you need to be doing as well. So it's certainly appreciated. You and I have talked a little bit about the weep holes and kind of how the weep holes work, and that they did work to design, even though this old wall is on the older side, that it didn't fail, that it actually did what it was supposed to do, that the structural integrity of the wall was still the wall, and the weep holes allowed water to rush out, including some material.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
that
So
fair to say?
again, it could be and again, we weren't out there to see it live, but I think it's um, the undermining and losing material at the bottom is certainly a significant factor. The weep holes, again, especially anytime you have weep holes in a coastal wall, when you have overtopping waves, it may create like a suction effect. So when the soil is up that high, obviously when you lose enough and it gets below the weep holes, they're less effective. But yeah, there's certainly the possibility of creating like a vacuum effect. Yes, water is getting out and it relieves hydrostatic pressure behind the wall. It also has the potential of, pulling sediment out with it. Additionally, we also don't know how much of that material was lost over the top of the wall. I mean, if the waves were crashing over the top, we may have lost some material over the top. So again, I think there's multiple things that contributed to the erosion. I'm not trying to deny anything. Sure, there's definitely a fair amount that was lost that was undermined, but yeah, the weep holes can certainly lose material as well as the wave action over the top.
You had mentioned in your sort of intro that you know where the seam is of the wall, and I'm not going to use engineering correct words, so forgive me, but um, where the seam is, that the contractor may have gone a few inches too short. Is that something that A, this mitigation strategy would rectify, or B, is that something we should be going back to the contractor that worked on the project originally and say, hey, listen, it wasn't as designed, or it wasn't, it came up a couple inches short, and this particular storm proved that. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and speak with our engineer because I'm not sure at the time of installation and final sign off that area looked like that. Like I don't know if there was anything that happened after the project closed out that caused that small gap. And again, the pictures out there are misleading because there is sheet pile throughout most of it. There is just a small area where again it may have been, it could have been damaged, or maybe through human error, maybe they didn't go down an inch or two, but that's not enough of a void to lose all that material. There's another, again, 18, 24 inches underneath the older footings that certainly lost material there. And again, just like your prior question, some material was probably lost over the top and through the weep holes as well. And again, these are situations that we haven't. This is not novel to this storm or the new seawall connecting into the old wall. This is, as you saw in my photos, this has happened in the past.
Yeah, it's like a couple times, so for sure it's not a new issue. So no, that's super helpful. I appreciate it.
I'm
I'll
very
pass the mic to.
pleased to I'm very pleased to hear that the new wall did what it was supposed to do, and I'm very interested in buttressing the old wall to continue to save as much as we can until we are ready for a major capital investment in the old wall.
Yeah. And then, Rob, I just want to thank you for providing the perspective with those photos from 2023, because that was a question that I was going to bring forward, was if our design of the new portion of the seawall had in any way affected the way water flows. But given the fact that all the old structure was still in place during that 2023 storm, and we still saw that erosion there. That answers my question that it's not the design, it's not the installation of the new seating steps and that sort of thing that affected anything. I think, what this highlights to us most is that as we move forward with the surf club master planning process, it just really highlights the need that we have as a town to address the design. Maybe it's something that we need to move in a different direction, like you said, creating more beach or that sort of thing. As we're looking at that from an engineering standpoint, but it doesn't seem to me like the design of the new Garvin Point wall in any way affected this washout since we saw it in 2023. So those pictures that provided some good answer and perspective for me.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for the update.
Comments?
But yeah,
Go ahead.
I think I've heard you talk a little bit indirectly about this, but I just want to put a fine point on it. Is there any reason for us to believe that this was shoddy workmanship or shoddy design?
So again, we had our engineer and contractor out there independently, not together. And again, I'm not a structural engineer, but I'm familiar enough with the work that there's too much evidence with those prior pictures, and then just seeing the very shallow footings with my own eyes and the gap underneath it for variable length that definitively tells me that there was some type of error or omission here. If there was, I'm truthfully not, I'm not aware of it. And again, that very small gap at the joint, I can't say that, at least right now, that was like that from project closeout at the end of May. So based on our engineer's assessment and then looking at it, I mean, I don't see anything significant, especially with the abutting structures and the history that we have out there.
Okay, so I think that was a very long no.
Engineer
Tell me,
speak, right?
Rob, after you do the mitigation, the next week we have the same storm all over again. Describe to me what that area looks like. I mean, your best estimate of what that area looks like.
Based on that design, what it should look like is uh, the day after we finish this mitigation measure, uh, it should still look like that. Like I think the law that this is being implemented to prevent the loss of material and allow water to flow freely at weak points and not bring sediment and sand with it. Now, just to expand on this answer, is I can't tell you it's going to look like that 5 years from now, and neither can the engineer. But I think in the short term, until a long term solution is derived, um, it should look like the day that it's installed.
So I guess what I'm having trouble with is if tens of thousands of gallons of water overtop the wall and then rushes back out to the sea, it's got to take something with it.
But over the top? Are you saying over the top or under the wall, Bruce?
Well, the problem we had with this storm is the waves overtopped the wall.
Exactly.
All that water had to get back somehow, right. And in the course of rushing back to the ocean, took fill with it any way it could.
Yeah, I mean, again, if the problem to me that we're trying to solve is, the shallow foundations and preventing any material from getting out underneath the bottom. If there's wave action over the top that pulls, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches of topsoil, and potentially some of the rock over, again, nothing is foolproof. I think this is the best mitigation strategy for the application, and again, until a long-term solution is derived.
Okay, so said in my own words, then I'll put words in your mouth for you. This is not intended to be a bulletproof fix. This is going to stabilize the wall. It's going to stabilize the soil behind the wall. We may see erosion, but not to the extent we wouldn't expect to see erosion to the extent that we saw this time.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment.
All right.
The old wall. Stabilizing the old wall.
The old wall, right?
Want to highlight, yeah, because people are mixing that, and also if we have a category, 3 hurricane, I mean, everything's off the table, right? In terms of what damage can occur. This is going to, but it's not going to protect.
We're building very expensive sandcastles on the beach. We can't really be shocked sometimes when the waves come and take them away. And this is my opinion. I think maybe just, for the board members, I think this all argues long-term that there's no wall there at all, that we really explore the idea of a living shoreline, which is, I guess, a fancy way of saying sand dunes and grass. But if you go up and down the asset,
like Hamo, yeah.
That's exactly what they've done. Big waves will still overtop. You'll still get all of that, but then you're dealing with moving sand around and not concrete. So as the master plan discussion evolves, hopefully there'll be room in the conversation for us to move in a way that is, I think in the long term, the 25, 50-year horizon, a better defense for the encroaching water.
And that's what coastal resiliency is all about, right? That's part of the master planning process. We have a coastal resiliency commission to make sure that we're not having to, fight a losing battle, right?
Rob, one more just general thought here. As you guys work through this mitigation strategy, and start to excavate in that area to clear it out to then put the crushed gravel in there. Are you guys able to document or take pictures so that we understand sort of the, what's the situation now underneath those 2 walls? And I guess the only reason I'm saying that is, and I'm not really looking to pass blame one but there's a lot of question about this particular cost. I've seen a lot of questions, whether we should be footing the bill or whether the contractor should be footing the bill. And so I guess, would it make sense for us to just document from a quality standpoint, just to make sure that, this is how it was done when you guys get down to that sort of raw footings area?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with all our projects, we do whether it's
What I figured.
inspectors that we have,
Yeah.
we'll certainly document. And one point I'd like to note here is with the money that's being suggested for the appropriation, if you if you add the $68,100 to the $23,000 change order that we had with the concrete increase, if you divide that by the total construction cost, that's just shy of like a 7% of the total construction cost. I mean, when we work with state money and state projects, they grant the town 10% for incidentals and an additional 10% for contingencies for a total of 20%. I mean, it's not uncommon, especially unit price projects, for quantities to increase, decrease, issues to arise. Um, situations happen, especially, when the nature is involved or there's a flaw during construction or whatever the reason may be, or additional concrete's needed. Unfortunately, with this project, we designed to the limit of the funding, and we got a lot out of it. I mean, look how much we were able to replace. But ultimately, slightly less than 7% of the total construction budget as an overage is actually really good for construction projects.
Sorry, lastly,
Okay.
I'm thinking of questions here as I go. Sorry, but I think this is all information that's chattered about, amongst the public on social media, et cetera. It's stuff that you and I have talked about, but just, for the record, in your professional opinion, and maybe in SLR's professional opinion, is there a need for a third party assessment here? Is that something that, we should be exploring, or is this something that, is common to a construction project like this? Just help maybe educate me and the public.
I think based on the history of this type of erosion in the area and it just being solely an erosion issue, I don't think a third party assessment is needed. I think consultation with our engineer and our field meetings and the mitigation measure we've come up with is enough, especially in the short term. If this was something where there was a structural discontinuity and something overturned, or there was something more significant like that, I would definitely would not be opposed to getting another opinion. But again, erosion is a very common thing, and especially common in this area, given the pictures. I don't think something like this warrants that type of review. But again, for something more significant, I am open to third party reviews.
Continuity if the wall moved.
If it would settle, displaced, overturned, cracked. But again, we with this storm, we didn't see any of that, and the New Garvin Point, again, like I said previously, remained unaffected.
So thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so with that, moving on to item number 8 is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Beach and Rec Department in the amount of $68,100 for storm-related repairs and improvements at the Surf Club pending Board of Finance approval.
Move.
Moved. Second.
All right, any further? I think we've talked about this enough.
I just
Any further comments or questions? Yep.
One line item question. I just didn't understand the first item on the scope that was given to us, the mobilization closeout. I don't know if there's anybody Rob, do you know what that is?
Yeah, so essentially, it's the cost of their equipment and to mobilize into the area. There's a number of things that they build into that, but it's basically a lot of that's the other items is mostly materials, and for each of those line items, this one is yeah, mostly for equipment and fuel and to mobilize and to stabilize construction entrances and all of that.
All right.
All right. With that, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? No, everybody voted, passes unanimously. And then following on that, item number, oh, yeah, 9, sorry. Discuss and take action to approve a bid waiver request from the town engineer to expend funds for storm-related repairs and improvements at the Surf Club.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, as was mentioned before, this is to just make sure to expedite the process and they're familiar with the project in the area, given the work they've done on Garden Point. We decided it was more expedient to stick with the same firm. So any further comments or questions on that? We talked about that earlier. No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and then item number 10, discuss and take action to award a contract to Sushaki and Son for storm-related repairs and improvements at the Surf Club in the amount of $68,100 and to authorize the first selectman to sign all documents related to this award pending Board of Finance approval of funding.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this is just actually awarding the contract. So with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. This will move on to the Board of Finance for the funding request. And Rob, thank you for your all your efforts on this. I know it's been a lot of time. It's important. Obviously, this is an important project, but it's hard when staff has to spend significant hours just pairing allegations and information that people are taking from social media. And I appreciate that. I think you've been extraordinarily responsive and responsible and professional throughout this, as well as Austin, because I know Austin's gotten calls too. So thank you for that. So moving on to item number 11. Discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from the Facilities Department to award a contract to M.E. O'Brien in amount of $177,051.72 for the installation of playground equipment and surfacing at Brown Elementary School. Company is on the Massachusetts Higher Education Consortium and authorizing the first selectman to sign all documents associated with this award. Budgeted in fiscal year 2025-26 Brown FF&E and BOE planned and cycled maintenance reserves. So that's where the funding's coming from. And can I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Okay, Al seconding it. Great. So we've got our construction manager and Peter Anderson, our facilities. If you just want to spend a second on this, was all part of the CIP, basically, right?
Yeah, so this project is getting booked to two different places. One is into CIP, which is why it's before you today. So we just built a playground at Brown as part of the bigger site work project last summer. We knew it was a teeny tiny playground. We were trying to squeeze it in between sections of ledge in the portion of the building that was as close as possible to the new pre-K rooms. Came out great. They love it. It is small, just as they expected. But what is now making the problem worse is all pre-K is going to be consolidated to Brown School next year. So we're going to have roughly double the kids up there. And now it's definitely too small. There's no way to expand in that area. Like I said, we're working around ledge. However, there is a good spot that's up in the former baseball field area, kind of adjacent to the what we call the upper playscape there, which is the grades 1 through 5 playscape. So the two will be separate, but within 50 feet of each other. This playscape will be a bit larger. It's got a nice big footprint of it's about 33 by 76. Half of that roughly is going to be playscape with the poured rubber surface like the other one we put in last summer. And the other half of it is going to be a swing set, and the swings will just have regular playground mulch fiber underneath them, just to avoid having such a huge area of rubber surfacing to keep the cost down a little bit. And the entire area will be enclosed by fence. Conveniently, there's already a fence on one elevation where we're going to put it, and we're going to box in the other three sides and put a couple gates. So the total project is $177,000, just a little bit over. $106,000 of that is going to come from the BOE Planned Cycle Maintenance Reserve. The balance of that, which is 7428.77, is going to basically rinse the Brown FF&E account. So that's the account that was established to facilitate the conversion to a pre-K through 5 school, and that was the residual left in there. So as soon as we get this executed, we could actually close that SIP project out completely. And again, the board funds do the rest of it. So all goes well, this gets approved today. We will issue the purchase order in the coming weeks, get the material on order, and we will start this as soon as school gets out in the summer.
Okay. And I guess any further questions on this?
I have a couple clarifying questions. One, so it says that this installation is going to occur at the site of a former softball field. So is this a softball field that was no longer being used by any of the town baseball softball leagues?
Correct. It's literally just a grass field right now.
Okay.
I think long ago it was used as a softball field, but it is gone to seed. The backstops are gone. There's no remnants. It's just what people know of it as.
Okay, so
It was actually
it's not like we're
a
taking a
Pee Wee
field
baseball field.
offline. My other question is, would the pre-K playground at Brown have been of sufficient size to move forward with had pre-K not been consolidated fully up at Brown?
If you ask the preschool teachers, no, of course not. Playscapes are never big enough. Even I built a $500,000 playscape once. It was the most massive one I've ever seen. And within a couple weeks, people are like, "Can we add swings next year?" So there's no such thing as a playscape that's big enough. It was designed intentionally to squeeze into that spot. And I worked with the school when we were designing that. We knew it was going to be small, but we really wanted to focus on location because the location there is perfect. I mean, you go out the doors. There's paved walkways that we built right into the area. It's all fenced in, nice and secure in there. So, would we have built this if the pre-K wasn't going over there? Probably not. But I think what this provided was the leverage they needed to say, okay, well now we definitely need one.
Okay. And then two more quick questions. One would be with funds coming out of planned and cycled maintenance reserve for this project, are there any projects that had to get pushed aside by the Board of Ed in order to do this?
No,
Okay.
this is open funding.
And then last question is the pre-K playground that was installed at Neck River. Is that now obsolete or is that one that was shared by pre-K and kindergarten?
It's funny. I was actually thinking that on the way home because I knew that would come up. And actually was thinking the same thing. I'm like, wait, did we just build that for nothing? But no, it is kindergarten as well.
Okay.
And I should mention that for Neck River as well. I'm sorry, for Brown School as well. It is shared pre-K and K. That was always the intention of it in the first place.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I'm glad to know that we did not build a playground for only 1 year.
Yeah, I'd be digging that stuff up and bringing it over.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for
You're
answering
welcome.
my onslaught of questions.
No problem.
I don't have any questions. I have some comments. I think I just learned for the first time that our brand new school, which was built to be townwide pre-K, and before it was opened, was switched to pre-K at both schools, is now not going to be a pre-K at all 1/2 year into the first school year of its existence. And not only that, we're going to spend more money to do this. I mean, I know this is just a protest vote, but I'm a hard no on awarding this contract, regardless of what's in the budget or not. I just don't understand how we've moved from all of the town is going to be in that school to half of the town to none of the town in a period of, well, less than a school year. So again, no question in there, just comment. I'm really disappointed that we're having this conversation. And I'm going to climb out on a limb and say any budget that has a replenishment for that reserve fund, I am not voting for.
Um,
I have
I
to
will
agree
just make
with
a
Bruce
comment
on
that
that.
there's been, my understanding, extensive conversation with the Board of Ed. This is all about enrollment. We have a lot of young families. They need those classrooms in that district, in District One,
I'm,
and that's
I'm,
the problem. So
I'm not asking you
I'm
to
just saying, so I think though,
Board
what
of
I
Ed,
would,
not you.
rather than just being I think go and reach out to the superintendent and have a conversation about it at least, because it's not like they're just sneaking this in. They're reacting to the fact that our enrollment has gone up significantly. The new elementary school opened up and they're bursting at the seams already, from what I've been told. And so you can get
Okay.
the information from him about why they made this decision. That's all. I'm just flagging that.
Okay,
I
it's
think it's worth
probably
a
also hard
conversation.
to plan for, right? I mean, it's the first
Yeah.
year kids enter the school.
It was all they did in the design of that school was plan. We got census numbers after census numbers, and I get that things change. I get that, but
Well, thank God they added the 4 extra classrooms, right? That people were so outraged about, but they stuck to their guns and said, we're going to need them.
I
So,
and I supported
look
that.
at the pushback that people gave about the 4 extra classrooms. So
I
just imagine if they threw on 2 more to keep pre-K there. So
I was
I think
never
they're
against
just
making that school
juggling,
bigger.
But no, I hear what you're saying. I do think it's worth, though, having a conversation with the superintendent and understanding a little bit more what's going on with enrollment. So, um, that's all. It's not like this is because they just decided management wise, I think it's an enrollment issue.
Now, it might have been nice if they'd have come to us with a 50,000-foot view. This is what we're planning to do, and these are the knock-on consequences of that decision. Because this is not simply moving those kids up there, it's spending a meaningful amount of money to do it.
I will just add one more thing, and maybe Scott can verify this as well, because I've been aware of this conversation for a while, just because of families with young children that have their children in pre-K at Neck Elementary and were upset that they were no longer going to have children all at the same school any longer because of this transition. Another piece that I heard is that they will be able to reduce the pre-K size by 1 classroom and 1 classroom teacher by consolidating everything up at
Nick,
Brown.
at
Um, yeah, so instead of having 4 pre-K classrooms, there's going to be 3, is what I heard. But when you had the number split up at the 2 schools, I do agree with what Bruce is saying, though, because I was a part of the Board of Ed when this conversation was going on, and we had the studies for enrollment and all those sorts of things. And I was in favor of the additional classroom space because I wanted to ensure that we were building a building that was large enough to accommodate our needs without additional spending in the future. I wanted it to be done right the first way. And so it does feel disappointing that this is where we're at already after only 1 year. And I get the enrollment, and it is where people move, and people move to Madison and they say, oh, we've got this new school, like we want to live in the district where the new school is. But at the end of the day, it's still disappointing that 1 year in, not even a full school year in, we need to do additional spending for infrastructure to accommodate the needs. So that's why, like Bruce, I'm always an advocate of do it right the first time. And, if we needed the extra classrooms, that's why I was in support of the extra classrooms. So it feels disappointing that this is where we're at.
I hear you on the disappointing. Both Bruce and Jen, I totally understand. But I think, to some extent, plans change and, the enrollment changes. And so, I have to give a little bit of respect and deference to the superintendent and to the Board of Ed for working through this. I think there's a fair point here that says maybe they should have come to us and, had an open conversation about it. So I will take that back to the Board of Ed as the liaison and make sure that's communicated. Um,
I think
but
that's the big point, Scott, is just,
Yeah,
making sure that there is that open line of communication. I knew about it because knowing families with young kids, but this is the first that Bruce is hearing about it. So that's not really fair to him either.
I think that's fair.
Well, and that might be part of the budget conversation, right? You know, that these are some of the changes that they're going to be implementing and how it's reflected in the budget too. So that's why I guess that was my point about directing this to the superintendent. I think this has all been, and I've never had formal presentation. I've just heard through the grapevine as well, that this was a change that was happening. So, and it's under their purview, right? They're the ones that do have the authority to make those kinds of changes, but we do have the budgeting authority in the sense of the capital plan because we're responsible for the capital plan. So,
Big deal for it.
all worthy points, all worthy points. So I think, but like I said, I think it's good to understand the reasoning, you know, and you deserve a right to hear that reasoning, right? So,
I will challenge the second part of your argument, Bruce, if I'm never voting for something ever again. Go have the conversation.
We'll see.
I mean, that sounds a little extreme to me. So, anyways,
yeah.
for what it's worth.
All right. Okay. Well, with that, then, I guess all in favor of item 11, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any nays? Okay. One nay and no abstentions. So,
Who was the nay? I want to know who it was.
That's what?
and,
For the
okay.
record,
Well, I think it's a fair point about communication. You know,
Mhm.
this is a new project, so it's all
I'm on it
I
already.
understand. Yeah. So, item number 12. Discuss and take action to adopt a resolution authorizing the town of Madison to agree to certain land use restrictions on the property known as 85 Lovers Lane in favor of the DECD as a condition precedent for its tenant, Madison Post 2096, Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, to be awarded a DECD Urban Act grant in the amount of up to $150,000. That's a mouthful. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so basically, this is a grant that the VFW received to pay for their building improvements. We as a town have to facilitate this, and we're also the owner of the land where that building is. They lease that from us. They own the building, but we own the land. So this was required by the state as a resolution just to kind of clarify the paperwork. We're a pass-through entity for the improvements. We had, if you recall, the American Legion, we were kind of a pass-through for that as well. But the American Legion, that process was a little different, and they also own their building and their land. So this was a request from the state that had to be included in the documentation. So that's all this is.
Can we white out the 150 and write in a 300? They probably would never notice that.
Yeah, I don't know, the OPM might have an issue, but all right. Any further questions on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. And excited. I know that the VFW is very excited to get this moving forward. They're grateful for the to get, you know, all these different building improvements that they need done. So item number 13, I just put this on here because the Madison train station, the North Platform project has been kind of talked about for a long time. It was actually included in some resolution like many years ago. And then a couple of years ago, Senator Cohen was able to get it funded. And so now it's been in design. And one of the hangups on the design was that they're going to be taking some of the wetlands that, which I know if anybody's been on the platform down at the Shoreline East train station, there's wetlands there. So in order to get that north platform, they're going to have to build onto some of those wetlands. So the state then requires a offset that the town ideally would be the one in Madison that we would provide an offset to the wetlands that we're taking, and it's 1-to-3 ratio, I think. So it took a while to identify that. They went through the town, they identified all these different locations, and they came up with 2 spots that they felt could meet the criteria for wetlands offset. Those are in your presentation that I sent to you, which is a draft of what's going to be shown at a public hearing by the state on February 11th. So today, I think the purpose wasn't necessarily to go through the presentation. It was more just to talk about it you guys have the presentation in advance. And then I wanted to ask you, do you want me to invite them to the board first? Right now, they're scheduled to go with the plans to the February 11th meeting. The two properties that are involved are town properties. One is on Horse Pond. There's a section of Horse Pond and where Wildcat and Old Duck Hole meet around the actual pond. It's like a triangle piece of property. And they would basically go through and rehabilitate that and restore the wetlands there. And there's a plan that identifies what they're going to be doing. That was one area that was identified. And then there was another one over off of Cops Road that's near the Grove School. There really is no public. It's kind of an odd area. We've driven over and seen that. The one on Horse Pond is more high profile. There's a lot of people in the neighborhood that walk. I live down the street from there. It gets, a lot of people walk around the pond. It's going to be very visible what they do there. The other area is not really visible as much to the public. So I think that, and this is where I got to understand a little bit more, like we're going to have to vote on some things at one point about, allowing them to go in and do that. So my thought was, you know, I could ask them to come and present directly to us, or we could do the public hearing and then have a conversation, because the public hearing is something that's required as they get along a certain milestone in their design process for the train station platform. And then there will be actions that the town would have to take to allow them to do the work on the property. I don't think we deed it. Do we deed it to the state? I don't remember now. So I need to educate myself on what we're doing there too. Like if we go ahead and say, yes, we're good with the wetlands restoration, what the legal technical steps are for us to do that. So today is more meant of a conversation and also to brief you, this is moving ahead. And I think they were saying construction in 2027 to be done by 2029. I don't know if that's in here, but that's from what I recall hearing. So the exciting thing is we're going to get our second platform, which means the train service should improve in Madison, because right now they have to skip us at times because there's no way to let people off on the southbound side, I think it is. Or no, is it the northbound? I can't. Anyway. They have to back into the train station when they're either picking up or dropping off people right now because there's only one platform. And we're the only station on Shoreline East that does not have a second platform now. All stations, Clinton was the last one, I think, that was finished, have a second platform, and we don't.
I had a quick question about the Horse Pond property.
Yes.
Would that limit access? It's a very optimistic picture. It's got water in it.
Well, it's not the pond, it's the triangle of land that's there right now. Right.
That is the ice, looks like it covers the ice skating access point. And I'm wondering, it doesn't?
It does not, and it's just that triangle over, and it's going to still be all public access. They're actually going to have like a walking trail around the pond itself in between the area they're digging out. And most people access the skating, as a lot of people know, right across from my house, right? That's where most people access the skating. This is actually up in the triangle where Old Duck Hole and Wildcat meet, or the Old Duck Hole continues and Wildcat stops. It's that corner there that right now is just fill. And it's mowed occasionally by the town. There's some random trees there. And then a lot of people either walk on the road or they walk adjacent, like around the pond itself. So they would be basically going into the triangle and kind of cleaning it out and then replanting things. And then they would maintain a walking trail, near the pond.
All right. Good.
Yeah. And then just
it sounds like all benefits. It doesn't sound like there's any deeded property, right? That we're dealing with? Nobody's personal
this is all
property.
town property,
Yeah.
but the town will have to, what I'm unclear about is if we actually give them the property, the state, or that's where I'm not up to speed yet on what the process is to do the mitigation, right? Like what our legal, what would we be doing legally for them? They're going to be paying for all of this. This is part of the whole project cost.
Wow.
Okay. And then I do have a question. Looking at the triangle on the site plan here, and it looks like there's a couple of homes there. that would back up to that. Would they be in any way adversely affected by any like inland wetlands regulations for anything that they currently have on their property? Or I'm sure part of the process they would have to be notified of any new regulations they would have to follow for pending projects.
Well, the houses are actually across the street from the triangle, so there's no,
Oh, there's a
nothing backs
road
up there.
there. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
there's
sorry.
a
I was
road.
thinking that was
That's
grass.
the old, yeah, that's Old Duck Hole Road. So there's a
Okay.
road there. So there's no houses on it. I'm sure people do use it for overflow parking occasionally because it's just grass right now, but which they would not be allowed to do.
Hmm.
Um, but those are all good questions. Like I think the public hearing will happen and then there'll be an opportunity. Will be neighbors, adjacent neighbors and stuff. There'll be probably another step after that once they actually take the step forward where neighbors would be notified and things like that.
Hmm.
So my question, I guess, was this meeting scheduled for February 11th for the state. Would you like to just go ahead and hold that and then board members can attend and then we kind of figure out the next steps after that? Or do you want to have like an interim meeting? And it's going to be tough to get the state scheduled before February 11th.
I
That's the
think
problem.
just
Public
stay the
hearing.
course.
Yeah,
What's
just stay the
already on
course.
the calendar.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll let them do their public hearing and then we'll promote it for people to watch and I'm sure we'll get a million questions asked and then we can do a follow-up with the state after that. And then we'll be more knowledgeable about it
Do
too.
do we know what time that meeting would be? I'm looking at the calendar. It looks like we have a Board of Selectmen budget workshop that evening as well, February
Uh,
11th.
Jeannie, when were they considering doing that? Jeannie had
They
been
were
working with
doing
them
it,
on.
they were considering it, doing it at the same time as your Board of Selectmen budget workshop, but that is your optional budget workshop. So you
Oh,
We may be
maybe
done.
number three that
Yeah,
you
it's
didn't
usually,
think we're gonna get
yeah,
to.
that's right. It's the
okay.
last one, so typically we don't have it, but and we could try to reschedule if we, so we could attend the hearing.
Okay. No, that's
Yeah,
that's good. Okay, because I didn't realize that was the optional one. Just looking.
yep.
Peggy, one
And then,
question I have
yep.
is, this doesn't happen very often. I'm wondering, besides the State Department of Transportation, does the State Department of Environmental Protection need to participate in this decision? Or is our local Inland Wetlands Commission the only authority that needs to approve this?
I don't have an answer to that, but I'm pretty sure it's the state. I think this trumps, excuse the word, but anything that the local inland wetlands would. But I would have to defer to. I'll talk to Aaron. We would know what the process would be. In terms of the station itself, I don't. The mitigation plan or the wetlands offset. I'm not sure. Maybe that's different. That would have to be approved. I mean, and I will highlight, they went through a lot of different options. In terms of looking at the town, it was really hard to find something that was big enough to meet all the criteria for the offset. That's why they came up with these kind of two different locations that were smaller.
Peggy, this first started about 20 years ago. So I have a little bit of history with it. And one of the complications way back when was, I believe the Department of Transportation identified some appropriate mitigation, but they hadn't confirmed or hadn't approved or consulted with the Department of Environmental Protection. And because it got out of sequence, that was one of the reasons the project stopped. So I guess it's just a technical question as to whatever's going to happen on February 11th. Does it have all of the approvals that the state needs to provide? That's really the question.
I don't think they've gone through all the approvals yet. This is a proposal, right? So, the first hurdle was, does it meet the qualifications? And that's where, if you live in the neighborhood of Horse Pond, you'll see the test wells were, so they had to go through a testing process. And, so, I don't think they've gone through approvals yet, but these are all good questions. I haven't had a conversation with them on this in a while. So, but I wanted to get something out there before they, and I don't want to hold up the hearing either, right? If they're ready to move on the hearing, let's keep the train on the track. But these are all good questions. So we'll try to find answers to that. And after the public hearing, it can be a discussion topic and hopefully we'll get answers to a lot of this. And it'll be interesting to see what the public thinks too about the project and everything. I mean, hopefully people are very excited. I'm excited that this is moving forward. One of the delays, Al, is when this was originally talked about, they only required one elevator. And so now the requirement is you have to have a backup elevator. So that has expanded, the budget, and the space requirements and things like that too. I was told that also was kind of one of the delays. So, anyway, but all good questions. Anything else on that? So to be continued. The item number 14 is a discussion of the potential amendments to the EDC tax incentive assessment deferral program. And this is the policy that the EDC had come up with a few years ago. The board adopted it. We've seen, and this is basically to help people who are making an investment in our town, and give them some sort of tax incentives to put for new development in town for that, benefit us from an economic development standpoint. So this is a policy. We've had several people adopt this now, successful projects. But what we've realized, and I think we realized through the conversation with what happened at Roberts, is sometimes, people that could use some assistance with this type of policy, they're not the property owner, they're the business owner, and then they might have a capital lease. And so we thought, especially something that is so significant to the town in terms of economic development for the North Madison part of town, is there a way to tweak this policy where we could help large tenants in town so that things don't stay dark, or if they go dark, they can get relet easily and quickly. And so one idea we've been talking about is expanding this to include businesses have to pay personal property tax. So if you put in a bunch of, for example, large refrigerators in your store, you have to pay a tax on that every year as part of your personal property tax. And those things cost a lot of money in the beginning. So to get some sort of tax relief in the first couple of years while you make that big investment could be a benefit. So I wanted to see if the board was comfortable with doing something like that. And then the EDC could then kind of develop a recommendation since they're the ones that kind of originated this policy. So I opened up for conversation. Clearly, Roberts is the one that kind of spurred the thinking here, and we want to do everything we can to help that get a new tenant in there, but also there might be some other things in the future that this could help assist as well if we have large vacancies in town.
The folks up at the North Madison shopping complex, formerly Roberts, all are in what's called a triple net lease, which is, I think, a source of some of this issue where, any and all of the maintenance and build out and construction costs, anything that they do is all on them as opposed to the landowner or the building owner. So I think this would be super, super helpful.
I agree. I think it's definitely worth exploring and trying to expand the intent, which is to make it a little bit easier to do business in Madison. So, and I think when we talk about I think the taxes can be substantial, but they're not, for us, but in the bigger sense of the town budget, these are not really material revenues that the town would be deferring to a later date. We're talking the thousands of dollars, not hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. So if it gives a developer a little bit of a tailwind, who's a tenant, a leasee, then I think it could be a good thing. and it's worth more discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be business friendly, that's for sure. Um, I guess, would we be at risk of anything where somebody developed a building and then then they were getting a tax deferral for that, but then also a tenant that was building out and getting their own tax deferral? Like, would people be able to stack them one on top of the other, or?
So all
Those are good
roads.
questions. I think
I say
as
we
the
leave that to
policy
the
is
EDC.
designed.
Let's let
Yeah,
the EDC go figure out the scenarios
yeah.
and
Yeah,
what the right language is and come back to us and
Right,
make a
right.
recommendation.
yeah,
But
yeah,
creating this
true, fair,
policy or amending this policy doesn't obligate us to do anything. It just gives
true.
us room to consider.
Yeah.
It opens the
So
funnel up, I think, right?
Hmm.
right. So we're not making commitment or boxing ourselves into a corner by doing this.
Hmm.
Let's explore it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. And remember that any time if these are granted, it goes through Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and a town meeting. So there's always a
Right.
public approval process that these are granted. So, okay, so great. So they're gonna work on this, and then they'll come back with a draft, and then we can kind of troubleshoot it from there and see if we're comfortable with the language they're proposing. Okay? All right, great, thank you. And then, okay, so that's it on the agenda, just the final citizens' comments. Do we have any hands raised?
You do.
Couple. Here we go.
Okay.
Go ahead,
State your name
John.
and address, please, and
John, you're
Yes,
muted.
good afternoon. John Rasmus, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Great. Just a comment on the seawall. What I did here was seems like the joint between the two walls was a contributing factor, and I'm just concerned that we have another storm. We're back doing this. I think this was a case, and this is just a comment. I know it's been approved, where the circumstances lend itself to a third-party review. I have full confidence in our town engineer, but as he stated, he's not a structural engineer. And I think the public, as well as you all, would feel more comfortable about this if we did have a third party. We asked the engineer who originally engineered it. We asked the contractor, but to me, those aren't independent reviews. And number two, I did not hear about any other significant damage on the coastline. Perhaps it's out there. I just didn't hear about it. So if anyone has heard about other towns with similar seawalls that went through this, I'd like to hear it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt Gordon.
Hi, everyone. Matt Gordon, 34 Lenore Drive. I'm very, very disappointed about the Neck River School. Again, as Bruce pointed out, this happened within the first year. And I remember hearing about the population studies that were going and the faith in those. I personally questioned those studies, and they failed within not even a year. And so now we're talking about the money for the playgrounds. What you didn't discuss is there going to be a need for renovations now with the rooms for pre-K at Neck River? Is this mistake or error actually going to be a bigger cost to the taxpayers? So I think it's beholden to all of us that are on boards to start using better scrutiny when this information comes through, that we're not, as it was said, to having deference, but to questioning this information as it comes through, because the taxpayers are the ones losing out at the end. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jim.
Hi, Jim Schmaltz, Jonathan's Landing. Listening to the entire meeting tonight.
Is that your cat, by the way, Jim? It's hard to take you seriously when I'm looking at a cat like that.
That's me, man.
I'm going to use that visual.
So we just approved 68,000 on the seawall. My feelings on that, I think that, the seawall, the Garvin Point bulkhead, worked the way that it should. All of that is true. Where the connection is made, it doesn't go all the way down to the footing. I think possibly some of the form or the concrete was washed out before it dried, that left a gap. You guys have seen the pictures, both sides of the seawall. Um, with, to move that much earth out of there, it wasn't just a small gap. There's debris, metal, plastic from the silt fences that were buried that were supposed to be removed via the contract. When you guys are looking at the contract, and one of the selectmen asked the question about what the mobilization was. So that's where I kind of start to have a problem. It's always cheaper to do it while you're there. If this was a known issue with the seawall, I've got a couple of questions. So the existing seawall, this footing is not deep. Why didn't we extend further down? Rob said it could have been a budgetary thing. Um, the selectmen seem to not be aware, you weren't aware that we were having problems at next school. Was anybody aware that there was problems that were going to remain a problem after spending $1.6 million or $1.4 million on the seawall upgrade? And rather than spending that money and then spending additional money on top of that for nice to haves like a boardwalk that wraps around and new stairs and seating, to have invested that money into the extending the seawall another 30 or 40 feet to where there doesn't seem to be a problem. So with the so with that, it seems like either we didn't know, or we weren't told, or we made decisions where we did something that was shiny and new versus pushing something forward back out the other way. And again, we're spending on the new playground. We're voting to spend, $177,000, and Board of Education hasn't said where the errors were. There's needs to be some accountability somewhere. Somebody needs to say, like, okay, well, I don't know what the numbers were. We're going to do this as a upgrade. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. So that, I would think that you guys would say, like, hey, this is what was budgeted for student enrollment. This is the numbers the state gave us. All of a sudden, we had 42 people move into this district that summer. This is why the problem is. Nobody knows, but you're willing to spend almost $200,000. So I think,
Okay.
and
Thank you, Jim. You've had your allotted time. Thank you for your comments. Are there any other hands raised?
Yes. Go ahead, Andrew Wood.
Thank you. Andrew Wood, 37 Seaview Avenue. I attended the two special meetings last week on the academy, and I'm disappointed that there's no mention of those meetings tonight, and I'm unclear what the next steps are. We've got five proposals: demolish it, make it a park, and the four proposals we heard. They certainly seem, each one has their own attractions. How are you going to move this forward and take decisions to decide what to do with that site? I'm very unclear. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Any other hands raised?
I do not see it. Oh, yes, we have one more. Walter Welsh, do you want to talk?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we
You hear
can.
me? Yes. So I'll make this fast. I've always admired anybody who's on these boards has so good for long meetings. It takes quite a constitution to do this. I've been on the resiliency board for a number of years. The resiliency plan that was done in 2016 identified Garvin Point as a real important problem. And of course, it's very good that we've got it finally done before this storm came, because there's a lot of what that whole point does is that besides being a place for swimming, it's a picnic area for people to come and just look at the sound. And if we hadn't got it done when we did this year, who knows what the storm would have done. So that's just a comment and the Resiliency Commission will be looking back at these things. The old wall has been a problem for a long time, and with the shallow footing. It's not new. The question is when you try and fix these things. The third comment I wanted to make is I've been looking at storms on the Sound for more than 40 years. The wave action in the December 18th or 19th storm was very similar to an amazing storm, Hurricane Irene. I haven't seen waves like that since Irene. Now, you'll have to talk to Deep to get what they will say about this. But the storm wasn't necessarily noted in North Madison. But if you looked at what was going on in the Sound, it looked just like Irene from 2011. So obviously, if you get another storm like Irene in the next 2 years, we got troubles. But I think that was a very special storm on the 19th. And again, I'll let you talk to Department of Energy Environmental Protection. But I think we really good that we got the Garvin Point one done. And I recognize that the wall is part of a much bigger problem for the whole surf club to think what we do. So thank you for all your work, and especially the town engineer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Appreciated. Any other hands raised? I guess with that,
Nope.
can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.